The Mafia boss was stepping out of his black Mercedes when something small tapped his hand. Not a gun, not a knife. A crumpled $10 bill. He looked down. A little black girl stood in front of him, hair pulled back in two uneven ponytails. Sneakers so worn the canvas was separating from the rubber. Both hands shaking as she held the money up like it was everything she owned. "Please," she said quietly. "This is all I have." His men moved instantly. "She's too close. Eliminate her." Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Now let's get started. Kang Min-jun raised his hand, stopping them mid-step. No one approached him like this. People crossed the street when they saw him coming. Store owners looked away. Mothers pulled their children inside. But this little girl didn't run. She didn't hide. She walked straight up to him with that wrinkled bill clutched in her tiny fist. Min-jun crouched down, eye level with her. His knees protested. At 43, he was feeling every year he'd spent building his empire from nothing. "What do you want, kid?" She swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "I want you to help me, because the police won't." That made him pause. He'd heard desperate pleas before. Grown men begging for more time to pay debts. Business owners crying about protection fees. Gamblers who'd bet their last dollar and lost. But this was different. This child wasn't begging. She was negotiating. She leaned closer, voice trembling but determined. "They said if I told anyone, my mama wouldn't come home." That's when Min-jun noticed her knuckles. Bruised purple and yellow, like she'd been hitting something hard, or someone had grabbed her too tight. Her jacket sleeve was torn at the shoulder, and the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, scanning the empty street like prey watching for predators. Kang Min-jun slowly took the $10, not because he needed it, but because whatever she was about to ask was worth far more than money. "Stay with me until the end," because what this little girl asked next shocked even a man who thought he'd seen every kind of evil in this city. Kang Min-jun had been running the West Side for 12 years. He'd built his reputation on three things: keeping his word, making problems disappear, and never bringing children into the business. His territory stretched from the warehouse district to the commercial blocks downtown. Everyone knew the rules. You paid on time, you stayed quiet, and you never, ever involved kids. That Thursday evening started like any other. Min-jun was leaving his restaurant, Hansu, after settling accounts with local business owners. Protection money, loan payments, the usual collections that kept his operation running smooth. His black Mercedes waited at the curb, engine purring quiet, while his two enforcers flanked the entrance like statues. The neighborhood knew this routine. When Min-jun emerged at 8:30 sharp, people found somewhere else to be. Store owners suddenly remembered they needed to check inventory in the back. Mothers called their kids inside for homework, and the smart ones crossed to the other side of the street before he even noticed them. But this little girl didn't cross the street. She didn't look away. She walked straight toward him with that crumpled bill held out like an offering. Min-jun had seen desperate people before. Men who owed money they couldn't pay. Women whose husbands had gambled away the rent. Kids running errands for dealers' eyes already dead at 15. Desperation had a smell, a weight, a way of making people do things they'd regret. This was different. This child wasn't desperate the way adults get desperate. She was focused, like she'd practiced this moment in her head 1,000 times. Her clothes were clean but old. Her jeans had been hemmed by hand, the stitching uneven. Her jacket was 2 sizes too big, probably a hand-me-down. But her eyes held something Min-jun rarely saw anymore. Pure, stubborn hope. "What's your name?" he asked, still crouched at her level. His men shifted nervously behind him. Young-soo's hand instinctively moved toward his jacket. They'd never seen their boss take this much time with anyone, let alone a kid. "Destiny," she whispered. "Destiny Brown. Destiny Brown." Min-jun repeated it slowly, tasting the name. "How old are you, Destiny?" 7. Her voice got smaller with each answer, but she didn't step back. "Almost 8. Min-jun glanced at Young-soo, who gave a barely visible shrug. In their world, children meant complications. Children meant witnesses, questions. Heat from law enforcement that nobody wanted. Smart criminals avoided kids entirely. "Where are your parents, Destiny?" Min-jun asked gently. That's when the tears started. Not dramatic crying like you'd expect from a scared child. Just quiet tears rolling down her brown cheeks while she fought to keep talking. "My mama's gone," she said. "They took her 4 days ago." Min-jun felt something cold settle in his stomach. A feeling he hadn't experienced in years. "Who took her?" Destiny looked over her shoulder again, scanning the empty street. "The bad men. They said she owed them money, but she doesn't have any money. We don't have any money except this." She held up the $10 bill again. Min-jun could see it was worn soft from being folded and unfolded so many times the creases were almost transparent. Probably her lunch money for 2 weeks. "These bad men," Min-jun said carefully. "What did they look like?" Destiny wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Big. Scary. One had a scar across his whole face, like someone cut him. Another one had letters tattooed on his fingers. They drove a gray van with no windows." Min-jun's jaw tightened. He knew exactly who she was describing. The Reyes crew had been pushing into his territory for months. Selling drugs, running protection rackets, generally making life difficult for everyone who'd been paying him for years. But taking someone's mother was crossing a line even criminals understood. "Destiny, where's your dad?" Min-jun asked. "He died last year. Got shot." She said it matter-of-factly, like she'd explained this to so many adults that it didn't hurt anymore. "It's just me and Mama now." Was just me and Mama. Young-soo stepped forward. "Boss, we should go. Someone's going to see." Min-jun silenced him with a look. In 12 years of running crews, settling disputes, and managing territory, he'd developed rules that kept him alive and out of prison. Rule number 1 was never get emotional about business. Rule number 2 was trust no one completely. Rule number 3 was never, ever get involved with kids. But looking at Destiny Brown clutching her $10 like it could buy miracles, Min-jun felt something shift in his chest. Maybe it was remembering his own mother, who'd worked in factories 16 hours a day after his father was deported. Maybe it was thinking about all the times he'd wished someone would step up when the world felt too big and too cruel. "Destiny, what exactly do you want me to do?" he asked. She took a deep breath like she was about to jump off a building. "I want you to bring my mama home. I know you're important. I know people are scared of you. But I also know you help people sometimes." Min-jun raised an eyebrow. "Who told you that?" "Mrs. Park from the corner store. She said when those other bad men tried to make her pay extra money, you made them stop. She said you protect people in the neighborhood." Min-jun almost smiled despite himself. Mrs. Park had been paying him protection money for 7 years, but apparently she'd put her own spin on the arrangement. "Destiny, this isn't how these things work. You can't just walk up to people like me and ask for help." "But I did," she said simply. "And you're still here talking to me." That stopped him cold. She was right. Any other night, any other person, Min-jun would have been in his car and gone by now. His men were probably wondering if their boss had lost his mind, standing on a sidewalk negotiating with a second grader. "The bad men said if I tell the police, they'll hurt Mama worse," Destiny continued. "They said if I tell anyone, they'll make sure I never see her again. But they didn't say I couldn't hire someone to help." Min-jun stared at this tiny girl who just used the word hire like she was conducting business. "You want to hire me?" "Yes, for $10. It's all I have, but I can get more. I can do chores or sell things or—" "Destiny." Min-jun's voice was gentle but firm. $10 isn't enough for what you're asking." Her face crumpled. For a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a terrified 7-year-old whose world had been destroyed. "Please," she whispered. "She's all I have. If something happens to her, I'll be all alone. And I don't know what to do when I'm alone." Min-jun looked at that $10 bill in his hand, then back at Destiny's tear-streaked face. In his line of work, emotions were weaknesses that got you killed or arrested. But standing there listening to this kid talk about being alone, something inside him cracked. "Tell me exactly what happened 4 nights ago," he said quietly. Destiny wiped her eyes and straightened up, trying to be brave. Mama was making dinner, chicken and rice. She always makes chicken and rice on Sunday nights because it's cheap and we can eat it all week. Min-jun nodded. Go on. Someone knocked on the door really hard, like they were going to break it down. Destiny's voice got smaller. Mama looked through the peephole and got scared, really scared. She told me to hide in the bathroom and not come out no matter what I heard. But I could hear everything through the door. What did you hear? They said my dad owed them money before he died. $30,000. They said Mama had to pay it back or they'd take me instead. Min-jun's blood went cold. $30,000 was pocket change to him. What he spent on a nice dinner some nights. But to a widow working minimum wage jobs, it might as well have been $30 million. My mama told them we don't have that kind of money, Destiny continued. She showed them our bank account on her phone. $67. That's all we had. Young-soo shifted behind Min-jun, checking his watch. They had other business tonight. Collections to make, territory to patrol. But Min-jun held up his hand again. What did they say then? They laughed. Said she could work it off. Special work. Destiny's voice cracked. And when she said no, they grabbed her. She screamed at me to stay hidden. To be brave. To find someone who could help. Tears were flowing freely now. But Destiny kept talking. They put her in the gray van. One of them said they'd be back in a week for an answer. That was 4 days ago. They're coming back in 3 more days. Min-jun felt his jaw clench. The Reyes crew wasn't just selling drugs and running protection. They were trafficking people. In his neighborhood. Under his nose. Destiny. Where have you been staying these 4 nights? In our apartment. I know how to make sandwiches. And we had some cereal. I've been waiting for Mama to come home. But she hasn't. Min-jun exchanged a look with Young-soo. A 7-year-old had been living alone for 4 days. Surviving on cereal and hope. While her mother was God knows where. Why me? Min-jun asked. Why did you come to me instead of calling the police or going to child services? Because Mrs. Park said you're the only one the bad men are scared of. Destiny's voice was stronger now. She said when you tell someone to do something, they do it. And she said you have rules about hurting families. Min-jun almost laughed. His reputation for protecting families had more to do with keeping heat off his operations than any moral code. But somehow this kid had seen through the violence and fear to something he'd forgotten was there. Destiny, what you're asking me to do could be very dangerous. These men, they're not just bad. They're evil. They hurt people for fun. If I help you, there might be fighting. People might get hurt. Destiny looked up at him with those wide brown eyes. Will you get hurt? The question caught him off guard. When was the last time someone had worried about his safety? His own men followed him out of loyalty and fear, but they knew the risks. This little girl was asking if he'd be okay. I'll be fine, he said softly. But Destiny, if I do this, if I help you get your mama back, you can never tell anyone. Not the police, not your teachers, not your friends. Do you understand? Destiny nodded so hard her ponytails bounced. I promise. I swear on my mama's life. Min-jun stood up slowly, his knees protesting. At 43, he was feeling every year he'd spent on the streets. But looking down at Destiny Brown, he felt something he hadn't experienced in over a decade. Purpose. Young-soo, he said without turning around. Call Taeyong. Tell him to bring the car around to the back. And get on the radio. I want every crew member we have on standby. Full weapons. Boss, Young-soo said carefully. We talking about hitting the Reyes crew over a kid? Min-jun turned around and both men took an involuntary step back. They'd seen their boss angry before, but this was different. This was personal. We're talking about cleaning up our neighborhood, Min-jun said quietly. The Reyes crew has been pushing boundaries for months. Taking somebody's mother crosses every line we have. He looked back down at Destiny. Kid, I'm going to ask you to do something very brave. Can you handle brave? Destiny nodded. I need you to go to Mrs. Park's store. Tell her Mr. Kang sent you and you need to stay there until I come get you. Don't leave that store for any reason. Don't talk to anyone except Mrs. Park. Can you do that? You're really going to help me? Destiny's voice was barely a whisper. Min-jun knelt down one more time and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Destiny, I give you my word. Your mama will be home tonight. Tears started flowing down her cheeks again, but this time they were different. Relief, hope, gratitude all mixed together. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Min-jun said, standing up. Thank me when you're having breakfast with your mama tomorrow morning. Destiny started walking toward Mrs. Park's door, then stopped and turned back. Mr. Kang, what if they come looking for me? Min-jun smiled, and for the first time in years it reached his eyes. Then they'll have to go through me first. As Destiny disappeared into the corner store, Min-jun pulled out his phone and started making calls. The Reyes crew had made a fatal mistake. They'd hurt a child in his territory. They'd taken someone's mother. They'd pushed too far. Taeyong, it's me. Round up everyone. We're going to war. Within 30 minutes, Min-jun's entire operation was in motion. Phone calls went out across the city like ripples in dark water. Crews from the warehouse district, enforcers from downtown, specialists who handled the kind of problems that required permanent solutions. By 9:15, 42 men had assembled in the back room of Hansu restaurant. These weren't ordinary criminals. Min-jun had handpicked every member of his organization based on 3 criteria. Absolute loyalty, the ability to handle business without creating unnecessary heat, and a code that didn't involve hurting innocent people. Ex-military, former cops who'd crossed lines they couldn't uncross. Men who understood that some jobs required surgical precision and others required sending a message so loud it echoed across the entire city. Listen up, Min-jun said, standing at the head of a long table covered with maps, photos, and weapons. The Reyes crew has been testing us for months. Tonight, they crossed a line that doesn't exist. He placed a photo of Destiny on the table. Several men shifted uncomfortably. Children changed everything. 7 years old. Mother taken 4 days ago. The Reyes crew is demanding $30,000 her dead father supposedly owed them. But this isn't about money. It's about respect. It's about territory. It's about the fact that these animals think they can operate in our neighborhood without consequences. Young-soo cleared his throat. Boss, intelligence says they're holed up in that old textile factory by the industrial park. The one with all the abandoned machinery. Perfect place to keep people if you don't want them found. Min-jun nodded. How many? 15, maybe 18. Armed but sloppy. They're not expecting trouble. Definitely not expecting us. Good. Min-jun's voice was ice and steel mixed together. Here's how this works. We go in quiet. We get the woman out alive. Anyone who put their hands on her doesn't walk out. Anyone who even looked at her wrong doesn't walk out. The Reyes brothers specifically, they get special treatment. Taeyong, Min-jun's oldest lieutenant, spoke up. What about witnesses? Other victims they might have. We get everyone out. Clean house completely. Make sure nothing like this ever happens again in our territory. The men around the table nodded. They'd done this before, but never for reasons like this. Usually it was business. Territory disputes, unpaid debts, disrespect that required violent correction. This felt different, personal. Min-jun pulled out his phone and showed them the text he'd received 20 minutes earlier. A photo of a woman tied to a chair in what looked like an abandoned factory floor. Keisha Jackson, Destiny's mother. Alive but clearly terrified. They sent this thinking it would scare me into paying ransom, Min-jun said quietly. They were wrong. Young-soo studied the photo. I know this place. Textile factory on 7th Street. Lots of hiding spots, but only 3 ways in or out. If we move fast, we can lock it down before anyone escapes. Perfect. Min-jun began distributing weapons from a duffel bag. Taeyong, take 10 men and cover the north entrance. Young-soo, 8 men on the south side. I'm going through the main entrance with the rest. What about police response? One of the younger men asked. Min-jun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The police don't patrol that area after dark. Too dangerous. Besides, this will be over before anyone thinks to call them. As his men prepared their equipment, Min-jun stepped outside into the cool night air. Mrs. Park's store was still lit up, and he could see Destiny sitting behind the counter, probably trying to stay awake. The kid had been through hell, but she'd been smart enough to find the one person in the neighborhood who could actually help her. His phone buzzed. Another text from the Reyes crew. This time it was a video. Min-jun watched Keisha Jackson trying to speak into the camera, her voice barely audible over her captor's laughter. Tell Destiny I love her. Tell her to be brave. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't protect her better. Min-jun deleted the video immediately. Some things were too cruel to exist even on a phone. Boss. Young-soo appeared beside him. Everything's ready. Vehicles loaded. Routes planned. We can be there in 20 minutes. Change of plans, Min-jun said, pocketing his phone. I want to be there in 12. The convoy moved through the city like ghosts. For black SUVs, windows tinted, license plates that would lead nowhere if anyone bothered to check. They took side streets, avoided traffic cameras, used routes Min-jun had memorized over 12 years of staying one step ahead of law enforcement. The industrial district was exactly what you'd expect from a place where people disappeared. Abandoned buildings, broken street lights, the kind of neighborhood where screaming wouldn't bring help because everyone knew better than to get involved. Min-jun's SUV pulled up 3 blocks away from the textile factory. Through binoculars, he could see lights in the main building. Guards walking patrol routes, but casually like they were bored. The Reyes crew had gotten comfortable operating in his territory. That was about to change. Taeyong's team in position, came the voice through his earpiece. North side secured. Young-soo here. South entrance covered. 3 guards eliminated quietly. Bodies concealed. Min-jun checked his weapon one final time. A .45 caliber pistol he'd carried for 9 years. Custom grip. Never missed what he aimed at. Tonight he planned to aim at everything that moved. You ready for this? He asked the men in his vehicle. Been ready since that kid showed up with $10. One of them replied. Nobody hurts children in our neighborhood. Nobody, Min-jun agreed. They moved like shadows across the factory grounds. Years of coordinated operations had taught them to communicate without words, to anticipate each other's movements, to strike with precision that left no room for mistakes. The first guard went down before he could draw his weapon. The second managed to reach for his radio, but never got the chance to use it. By the time Min-jun reached the main factory floor, 9 Reyes soldiers were already neutralized. Inside the factory, they found what Min-jun expected and hoped they wouldn't. Evidence of human trafficking on a scale that made his blood boil. Photos, documents, a ledger showing dozens of transactions involving people sold like merchandise. Boss! Young-soo's voice crackled through the earpiece. Found her. 2nd floor, northeast corner. She's alive but looks drugged. Barely conscious. Anyone with her? For guards. Not anymore. Min-jun felt something inside his chest loosen slightly. Keisha Jackson was alive. That meant he could keep his promise to Destiny. Taeyong. What's your status? 3rd floor. You need to see this, boss. They've got 6 other women here. All in bad shape. Looks like they've been here for weeks. Min-jun closed his eyes briefly. The Reyes crew hadn't just taken Keisha. They were running a full operation, kidnapping women, probably planning to ship them overseas. In his territory. Under his nose. Get everyone out. Medical attention for anyone who needs it. Safe transportation to wherever they want to go. Full protection until this is over. What about the Reyes brothers themselves? Min-jun checked his watch. 11:52. Destiny had been waiting over 3 hours for news about her mother. 3 hours too long. Main office. 3rd floor, west side. That's where we finish this. The walk to the main office felt like a funeral march. Min-jun had killed before, but always for business reasons. Territory disputes, unpaid debts, threats to his organization. This was different. This was justice for a 7-year-old girl who'd offered him everything she owned to save her mother. The brothers were exactly what Min-jun expected. Carlos Reyes, the older one, was counting money when Min-jun's team breached the office. Miguel Reyes, the younger brother, was on the phone arranging another pickup. Both men reached for weapons when they saw Min-jun. Neither made it. "Kang Min-jun," Carlos said, hands slowly rising. "We can work this out. Business is business." "You're right," Min-jun replied calmly. "Business is business. And your business just ended. The woman, she's worth $30,000 to us. We split it 60-40. You get the bigger cut." Everyone walks away happy. Min-jun stepped closer. "Let me tell you about that woman. Her name is Keisha Jackson. She's a widow. She works 2 jobs to support her 7-year-old daughter. Her husband was killed in a shooting last year, and she's been struggling to keep food on the table ever since." The brothers exchanged glances. They clearly hadn't expected Min-jun to know personal details. "Tonight, that 7-year-old daughter walked up to me and offered me $10 to help her. $10. Everything she had in the world because you animals took her mother." "Look, we didn't know she was connected to you," Miguel said quickly. "This is a misunderstanding. We can make this right." Min-jun pulled out his phone and showed them the video they'd sent earlier. Keisha Jackson, terrified and helpless, begging for her daughter's safety. "You made her record this. You laughed while she cried. You threatened a child." "It was just business," Carlos insisted. "Nothing personal." "You're wrong," Min-jun said quietly. "This couldn't be more personal." What happened next took exactly 2 minutes. When it was over, the Reyes crew's trafficking operation was permanently closed. The factory fell silent except for the sound of Min-jun's men securing the area and helping the rescued women. Min-jun walked back to where Young-soo was helping Keisha Jackson to her feet. She was weak, disoriented, but alive. Her eyes focused on Min-jun with confusion. "Who are you?" she whispered. "I'm a friend of your daughter's," Min-jun said gently. "Destiny's waiting for you at Mrs. Park's store. She's been very brave." Keisha started crying, not from fear or pain but from relief. "Destiny, is she okay? Did they hurt her?" "She's fine. Scared but fine. She's the reason you're safe right now." "I don't understand." Min-jun helped Keisha toward the exit. "Your daughter came to me tonight. She offered me $10 to help you. Bravest thing I've ever seen." As they walked through the factory, Keisha looked around at the aftermath. She was smart enough to understand what had happened, even if she didn't know the details. "You killed people for us," she said quietly. "I protected my neighborhood," Min-jun corrected. "There's a difference." "Why? You don't know us. We're nobody." Min-jun stopped walking and looked at this woman who'd survived 4 days of hell because her 7-year-old daughter refused to give up hope. "Keisha, you raised a child who walked up to the most dangerous man in the neighborhood and asked for help. Not because she was stupid or reckless, but because she knew right from wrong and was willing to risk everything to save you. That makes you somebody very special." They reached Min-jun's SUV. Young-soo opened the door while Taeyong coordinated cleanup operations behind them. By morning, there would be no evidence that the Reyes brothers had ever existed. "What happens now?" Keisha asked. "Now you go home. You hug your daughter. You try to forget this ever happened. And you? What do you get out of this?" Min-jun thought about that question as they drove through the empty streets toward Mrs. Park's store. What did he get out of risking his organization, his reputation, his carefully maintained peace with other criminal families? He got to keep a promise to a 7-year-old girl who believed the world could be good if the right people cared enough to make it good. That seemed like enough. Mrs. Park's store had never felt so bright. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead while Destiny sat behind the counter, her small legs swinging back and forth from a chair that was too tall for her. She'd been staring at the door for what felt like forever, jumping every time someone walked past on the sidewalk. Mrs. Park kept offering her crackers and juice boxes, but Destiny's stomach was twisted too tight to eat anything. She just wanted her mama. She wanted this nightmare to be over. When the door chimed at 12:30 a.m., Destiny's heart nearly stopped. But instead of the bad men with scars and tattoos, Mr. Kang walked through the entrance with the most beautiful sight she'd ever seen. Her mother. "Mama!" Destiny launched herself off the chair and ran faster than she'd ever run in her life. Keisha Jackson caught her daughter and held her so tight it hurt. But Destiny didn't care. She breathed in her mother's familiar smell, cocoa butter lotion and the lavender soap she used. "Baby? Oh my baby?" Keisha whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I left you alone." "I wasn't alone," Destiny said, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "Mr. Kang helped me, just like I knew he would." Keisha looked up at Min-jun, who stood quietly by the door with Young-soo. Mrs. Park had retreated to the back of the store, giving them privacy for this reunion. "How can I ever thank you?" Keisha asked. Min-jun reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled $10 bill Destiny had given him. He walked over and gently placed it in Destiny's small hand. "Your payment's been refunded," he said with a slight smile. "Consider the job completed at no charge." Destiny looked down at the money, then back up at Min-jun. "But I hired you. That was our deal. Kid, you gave me something worth more than money tonight." "What?" Min-jun knelt down to Destiny's level one last time. "You reminded me why I do what I do. Sometimes we forget that protecting people isn't just about business. Sometimes it's about doing what's right." Destiny carefully folded the $10 bill and put it in her pocket. "Will the bad men come back?" "No," Min-jun said with absolute certainty. "They won't be bothering anyone ever again." Keisha understood what that meant, but she didn't ask for details. Some questions were better left unanswered. "What happens now?" Keisha asked. Min-jun stood up, his expression serious. "You go home. You lock your doors. You live your life. But Keisha, if anyone ever threatens you or Destiny again, you call this number." He handed her a simple business card with just a phone number printed on it. "Day or night. No questions asked. I can't pay you if something happens again. You don't need to. Destiny's already paid for a lifetime of protection." Young-soo stepped forward. "Boss, we should go. Cleanup's finished. But we need to make sure everything's secure." Min-jun nodded, then looked back at Destiny. "You take care of your mama, okay? And Destiny, remember what you learned tonight. Sometimes the right person will help you, even when the world feels scary. You just have to be brave enough to ask." "I will," Destiny promised solemnly. As Min-jun and Young-soo headed toward the door, Destiny called out, "Mr. Kang." He turned back. "Are you a good guy or a bad guy?" Min-jun paused, considering the question. In his world, the lines between good and bad weren't always clear. He'd done terrible things to terrible people. He'd broken laws, hurt enemies, operated outside society's rules for 12 years. But tonight, he'd saved a mother and daughter. He'd kept a promise to a 7-year-old girl who believed in him when she had nowhere else to turn. "I'm whatever I need to be," he said finally. "Tonight, I got to be the good guy." After they left, Keisha and Destiny walked the 8 blocks home to their small apartment. The same route Destiny had taken alone 4 days ago, terrified and desperate. Now she held her mother's hand tight, both of them alive and safe. The years passed. Destiny grew up under Mr. Kang's silent protection. She excelled in school, stayed out of trouble, and never forgot the night a Korean Mafia boss saved her family. She went to college on a scholarship studying social work. She wanted to help people the way Mr. Kang had helped her. Wanted to be someone who stepped up when the world felt too cruel. During her junior year, she started noticing things. Families in crisis, children in danger, women trapped in situations they couldn't escape. The system was supposed to help them, but the system was slow. The system had rules. The system didn't always protect the people who needed it most. So Destiny started leaving notes at Hansu restaurant. Small envelopes with information inside. An address where a child was being abused. A name of a man trafficking women. Details about a gang recruiting teenagers. She never signed the notes. Never asked for updates. But somehow, mysteriously, the situations always resolved themselves. The abused child would suddenly be removed from the home. The trafficker would disappear. The gang would move to a different neighborhood. Destiny became Mr. Kang's eyes in the legitimate world. She fed him information, and he handled problems the legal system couldn't or wouldn't touch. It was a partnership neither of them discussed, but both understood. By the time Destiny was 22 and interning at the district attorney's office, she'd referred 17 cases to Mr. Kang. 17 families saved. 17 monsters removed from the streets. She told herself it was justice. A different kind of justice, but justice nonetheless. Then everything changed. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Destiny's supervisor called her into his office. He was holding a manila envelope, his expression grim. "Destiny, I need you to review this case file. Federal investigation. Been ongoing for 3 years. They're finally ready to move." Destiny took the envelope, her hands steady. She'd reviewed hundreds of case files during her internship. This was routine, until she opened it. The first page was a surveillance photo. Kang Min-jun stepping out of a black Mercedes. Young-soo and Taeyong flanking him like shadows. Her hands started shaking. The file was massive. 3 years of surveillance, wiretaps, financial records, witness statements. The federal government had built an airtight case against Mr. Kang. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. 15 counts that would put him away for life. Destiny flipped through the pages, her stomach twisting. They had everything. Bank records showing millions in illegal transactions. Recordings of him ordering hits. Testimonies from informants who'd turned state's evidence. And there, buried in the middle of the file, was evidence of the 17 cases she'd referred to him. The federal investigators didn't know she was involved. They thought it was routine criminal activity. But Destiny recognized the addresses, the names, the dates. Her supervisor was still talking. "This is the biggest organized crime case in the city's history. When we arrest Kang, it'll send a message to every criminal organization operating here. We need all hands on deck for the prosecution." Destiny looked up at him, her mouth dry. "When are you arresting him?" "Next week. Federal marshals are coordinating the takedown. It's going to be big." After she left his office, Destiny sat in a bathroom stall for 20 minutes, trying to breathe. The man who saved her life was going to prison, and she had evidence that could either help convict him or potentially derail the entire case. If she revealed her connection to Mr. Kang, if she admitted she'd been feeding him information, the prosecution would fall apart. Defense attorneys would argue witness tampering, illegal surveillance, contaminated evidence. Mr. Kang would walk free, but Destiny would destroy her career before it even started. She'd face criminal charges herself. Obstruction of justice, conspiracy, accessory to murder. If she stayed quiet, said nothing, the case would proceed. Mr. Kang would be convicted, sentenced to life in prison, and Destiny would become the prosecutor she'd always dreamed of being. All she had to do was let him go to prison. The man who saved her mother. The man who protected her family for 15 years. The man who'd kept his promise to a 7-year-old girl with $10 and hope. That night, Destiny stood outside Hansu restaurant for 2 hours. The manila envelope was in her bag. Inside was a copy of the federal case file. Evidence that would let Mr. Kang know what was coming. Give him a chance to run, to hide, to disappear before the marshals came. All she had to do was walk through that door. But if she did, she'd be crossing a line she couldn't uncross. She'd be choosing loyalty over law. Choosing the man who saved her over the justice system she'd dedicated her life to upholding. Destiny thought about all the cases she'd referred to Mr. Kang. 17 families saved. 17 children protected. Things the legal system couldn't or wouldn't handle fast enough. She thought about her mother, who worked 3 jobs now because she refused to accept money from Mr. Kang. Who'd built a life through hard work and determination after being rescued from traffickers. She thought about the 7-year-old girl she'd been, desperate enough to walk up to a Mafia boss, brave enough to ask for help when everyone else had failed her. What would that little girl think of the woman she'd become? Inside the restaurant, Min-jun was having dinner with his lieutenants when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "There's someone outside. Been standing there for 2 hours. I think you should see who it is." Min-jun walked to the front window and looked out. His heart stopped. Destiny Brown stood under a streetlight, a bag over her shoulder, her face torn with an expression he recognized. The same expression she'd had 15 years ago when she'd offered him $10 to save her mother. The look of someone about to make an impossible choice. Min-jun grabbed his jacket and walked outside. Destiny watched him approach, and for a moment she was 7 years old again. Small and scared but determined. "Mr. Kang," she said quietly. "Destiny." He stopped a few feet away. "It's been a long time. 15 years. You've done well for yourself. College degree. Internship at the DA's office. Your mother must be proud." Destiny's hands tightened on her bag. "How did you know?" "I've kept tabs on you. Made sure you were safe. That was the deal, remember? Lifetime protection." They stood in silence for a moment. Cars passed on the street. Normal people living normal lives, unaware of the moral calculation happening under the streetlight. "There's a federal case," Destiny said finally. 3 years of evidence. They're arresting you next week." Min-jun's expression didn't change. "I know. You know? I've known for 6 months. I have people in places you'd be surprised." "Then why haven't you run?" Min-jun smiled sadly. "Where would I go, Destiny? This is my neighborhood. These are my people. I run. I leave them unprotected. You'll go to prison for life." "Probably." Destiny pulled the manila envelope from her bag. "This is a copy of the case file. Everything they have on you. If you review it, you might find weaknesses, ways to fight it, maybe even win." She held it out, her hand shaking. Min-jun looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "You bring me that, you're committing a crime. Obstruction of justice. You'd lose everything you've worked for. You saved my mother. You saved me. I did what anyone should have done. But you're not anyone. You're the man who kept his promise to a 7-year-old girl. The man who protected my family for 15 years. The man who made this neighborhood safer, even if your methods weren't legal." Min-jun gently pushed the envelope back toward her. "Destiny, I've made my peace with what's coming. I've done things that deserve punishment. But you have a chance to do real good in this world. Legal good. The kind that doesn't require violence or fear. The system is broken. You know that. I've seen it every day at the DA's office. People who need help don't get it because of paperwork and procedure and that's why the system needs people like you to fix it." Min-jun interrupted. "Not people like me working around it." Tears started flowing down Destiny's cheeks. "I can't let you go to prison. Not after everything." "Yes, you can. Because that's who you are. You're not a 7-year-old girl with $10 anymore. You're Destiny Brown, future attorney, future judge maybe, future person who changes the system from inside." "I don't know if I can do that." Min-jun stepped closer and placed his hand on her shoulder, just like he had 15 years ago. "That little girl who walked up to me, she was the bravest person I ever met. Not because she wasn't scared, but because she did the right thing even when it terrified her. That's still who you are. What's the right thing now? You already know. That's why you've been standing out here for 2 hours." Destiny looked down at the manila envelope. Inside was information that could save Mr. Kang and destroy everything she'd built. "The 17 cases I referred to you," she said quietly. "Those families I helped save by sending you information. That wasn't legal either." "No, it wasn't. But you were young. You were trying to help people. The federal investigators don't know about your involvement, and they don't need to. That's between you, me, and your conscience. So I just let you go to prison? Pretend I don't know? Become a prosecutor and send other people like you away. People like me belong in prison, Destiny. I killed men, hurt people, operated outside the law for 15 years. The fact that I did some good doesn't erase the bad. You saved my mother, and I'm glad I did. Keeping that promise was the best thing I ever did. But it doesn't make me innocent." Destiny wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "I don't know how to be the person who just lets you go to prison. You do it the same way that 7-year-old girl asked for help. One step at a time. one decision at a time, knowing that sometimes the right choice is the hardest one. Min-jun took the manila envelope from her hands and walked over to a nearby trash can. He dropped it inside. There. Decision made. Now you go home. You finish your internship. You become the prosecutor you're meant to be. And when you're in court someday, fighting for someone who can't fight for themselves, you remember that justice isn't always simple. But it's always worth pursuing. Will you be okay? Min-jun smiled. I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I'll be fine. Can I visit you? In prison? No. Clean break is better. You need to build your life without connections to people like me. Destiny started crying harder. I never got to thank you properly. For everything. You thanked me 15 years ago. That was enough. It wasn't enough. It'll never be enough. Min-jun pulled her into a hug. This little girl who'd grown into a woman who would change the world in ways he never could. Your mama raised you right, Destiny Brown. Now go make her proud. They stood under that streetlight for another minute. A mafia boss and the girl he'd saved. Two people connected by one impossible night 15 years ago. Then Destiny stepped back, wiped her eyes and walked away. She didn't look back. If she looked back, she might change her mind. Min-jun watched her go, then walked back into Hansu restaurant. Young-soo looked up from his dinner. Everything okay, boss? Everything's fine. Just saying goodbye to an old friend. 1 week later, federal marshals arrested Kang Min-jun outside his restaurant. The news covered it for days. The biggest organized crime bust in the city's history. 15 counts. Potential life sentence. Destiny watched the coverage from her apartment. Her mother beside her on the couch. That's him, isn't it? Keisha asked quietly. The man who saved us? Yes. You could have warned him. Given him a chance to run. I know. Keisha took her daughter's hand. You did the right thing. Did I? Yes, because he would have wanted you to. Because you're going to be the kind of prosecutor who makes the system work the way it's supposed to. And you can't do that if you start by breaking the rules. Destiny squeezed her mother's hand. It doesn't feel right. Most right things don't. That's how you know they're actually right. The trial lasted 3 months. Destiny didn't attend, but she followed every detail. The evidence was overwhelming. The testimony damning. Kang Min-jun's defense was that he'd done what was necessary to protect his neighborhood. But the law didn't care about necessity. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty on all 15 counts. Life in prison without possibility of parole. Destiny sat in her apartment when the verdict came down, staring at a photo from 15 years ago. Her and her mother, taken a month after they were rescued. Both of them smiling, alive, safe. Because of a man who was now going to die in prison. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't carry this. You made the choice that protects your future. That's what matters. Be the prosecutor who saves the next kid like you. That's how you honor what I did. MJ. Destiny read it 3 times, then deleted it. Untraceable. Like everything else about Kang Min-jun. She walked to her closet and pulled out a small box she'd kept hidden for 15 years. Inside was a crumpled $10 bill. The same one Mr. Kang had returned to her that night. Destiny held it in her hands, thinking about the girl she'd been. Scared but brave. Desperate but determined. Willing to risk everything to save the person she loved. She thought about the woman she'd become. A prosecutor who would fight for justice within the system. Who would help families legally, officially, the right way. She thought about the man in prison who'd made both versions of her possible. Then Destiny carefully folded the $10 bill and placed it back in the box. Not because she was ashamed of what it represented, but because some memories were too important to carry every day. Some debts could never be repaid. Some choices would haunt you forever, even when they were right. And sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone sacrifice themselves so you could become who you were meant to be. Destiny Brown went on to become one of the most respected prosecutors in the city. She fought for families the system forgot, protected children who fell through the cracks, took down criminals who thought they were untouchable. And every single case, She thought about a Korean mafia boss who taught her that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones brave enough to do what's right, even when the law says it's wrong. She never visited him in prison, but every year on the anniversary of that night, she'd drive past Hansu restaurant, which still operated under new management, and she'd remember the 7-year-old girl who walked up to a monster and found a guardian angel instead. Because that's the thing about courage. It doesn't always look like heroes and villains. Sometimes it looks like a little girl with $10. Sometimes it looks like a criminal keeping a promise. And sometimes it looks like a prosecutor letting justice take its course, even when every fiber of her being screams to intervene. The world isn't simple. Right and wrong aren't always clear. But we make our choices and we live with them, and we hope that somehow, in the end, the good we do outweighs the harm. Kang Min-jun died in prison 7 years into his sentence. Heart attack. Sudden but peaceful. When Destiny heard the news, she didn't cry. She'd cried all her tears that night 15 years ago, standing outside his restaurant with evidence that could have saved him. Instead, she took that $10 bill from her box and donated it to a nonprofit that helped families of crime victims. Because that's what he would have wanted. That's what that little girl with the crumpled bill would have wanted. And sometimes honoring the people who save us means becoming the person they believed we could be. Even when it breaks our heart. Even when it costs them everything. Even when the price of justice is higher than anyone should have to pay.